Hey, welcome back to the shop. Today we're going to be looking at making a temporary bellows to cover up this machine surface here. We're going to want to know a few things. This guy is 11.2 centimeters wide, or 4.5 inches. That's our minimum distance of the inside of what these folds are going to be. And what I'd like to do for this one is, I think if I have a ½ inch or 3 to 3/4 of an inch worth of bevel piece on the bellows, something about like that, I think would work nicely. So I'm going to lay this out at about 3/4 inches for each piece or segment. And I'll leave a ½ inch on each end for the segment sections. I'm just marking along at about 3/4 of an inch. It gives me another ½ inch on this side, give or take, for this piece of paper. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start to fold this piece. I've got a nice middle section here that I can start with. Kind of keep it nice and even. And this is just to get an idea as to how, once you start working with the actual fabric, how the fabric's going to want to lay down. Paper's a little bit different, but you get to practice and see how they kind of end up. I like to start in the center and work my way out, because it lines up with the way that the final piece is going to work. At least you can start to see it here. So even with cloth, the next part, it's important, is that you have enough area to cover your 11.2 centimeters or your 4.5 inches. So we'll take a look at the center line of this page, 5.5 to our center line, and then we need to go out from each side at least 4 3/4. So if I do 5, 2.5, and just make a mark here and then here as well, then I can perform my next bend. That's where the minimum of my edge or my hangover is going to come from. So I start with my bend, and in this case I want it to be a little less than 90 degrees, because as you start to fold this out, this bend will open up. Same thing on this side. And we end up with that type of shape. And then I'm going to go back bend on these two. So I get more of a crease line. And the reason why I do this in paper is you get to experience and feel how your material is going to want to fold and how the folds change, because you're going to take that section where this is bent over and you're going to force that bend across the length of the part. So in this case, I'll start with this one. This is going to go down, and I'm going to carefully bend this section over so that I maintain that corner. This one goes down, and I'll grab this corner and pull it over and down. And I'm not going to worry or panic about what's happening with the other surfaces, because as we move along, the paper in this case is going to want to crimp and fold. You just have to kind of work through it on the paper. When we show it on the cloth, it's a lot different. And there, that's the first side. And we'll come over and do the same thing on the next side. So you'll notice that this angle here is bent in a little bit more than what you would probably want ideally. In cloth, this is not a bad situation to be in because you can bend it back out, because the cloth is actually is more flexible than what this paper is once I folded these in and locked them into place. The cover would slide out and back in. So we've got this fabric here. It has a rubberized coating on this side and a cloth backing. We picked it up at one of those big box stores that you can buy groceries at. You could probably get it at any other fabric store or probably online. You want something that is thicker than just cloth, and I like this because it has that fabric. It does it will succumb to heat, but this is okay for what we're using it for. Let me cut a piece off. So we'll just do a couple quick folds. Start in the middle. And what I would do here for this one is I would use an iron. Come in with the iron, press down, create that seam. And then I would make the next fold. And the next fold. And use the iron again to bring this other seam down and increase a little bit of the heat on the next one. With this material, we found that if we pulled it apart soon enough, they wouldn't stick, or we would put a piece of paper in between when we were doing the ironing. That helped a lot. And in this case, you'd get you'd have to have a longer piece, of course. And then the same process with folding the paper you apply to this. So create your angle creases. Create your angle creases, iron it in place. Bend it back to the other side with your papers holding everything apart. Iron it back down on this side. And then when you remove your paper at this point in time, nothing has stuck together. Then you can start with doing the same bends that you performed with the paper. It's going to be a little bit different because the fabric just kind of goes wherever it wants to go, and it creates the same rough shape. And that would be one rib or one section of a bellows made of cloth or a fabric. So if this was that same piece of fabric, the cloth, what I would do, or how I would go about sewing it, is I would open it up, get this piece in the machine, and I would start to do a stitch. Going right on down there. I would get to this point and I would pause. Then I would open it up, turn it and open it up so that that's now in there, and I would continue the stitch. Going down this way and rotating, making sure that I have not gone and stuck this piece to this piece. So see how that was open? And then turn it, open it up some more, continue down. So I'll be honest with you, I think when I did what I did for the grinder, that was the first time I ever used a sewing machine since I sat down with Grandma. And I don't have any idea, but the way I see it, that if you have thread and a needle, you can poke your way through something like this. You're just doing it by hand without a machine. Or maybe you have a friend with one who's willing to do the sewing for you. Or if you've got an old sewing machine lying around, get it out, lube it up. Use it just like you would any of your other machine tools. Put it to work. It'll do the cuts in this stuff just like anything else would. Just if I can do it, I think anybody out there can do it. It's going to take some trial and error. It took me a while to figure out how not to sew them together. I think I think I had to cut out about 6 threads from making those mistakes. You can get an idea right there where that seam is and how they come together up at the top, sewn in on the top into that area. This one kind of got a little carried away. And then right along the edge, it stiffens up the edge quite nicely. You can see a little bit of the dust bouncing on top of this guy. That's with that fabric that we showed you a minute ago. Works wonders. The original machine pieces, I just drilled out the old sections and I used aluminum rivets to poke through the fabric and then re-rivet the piece back on. It's good and stiff here. You can see that just for what I'm using this for, right there, you can get it fairly clean rather quickly. Let me see what that was. It's got a little bit of oil on there, but it works really nice. And all it has to do is cover the waste surfaces that are below there, so they have a good long life. So here's another one that I made earlier. It has a much higher stance, so it can compress more, and of course come out to a larger area. The ends are going to want to balloon out. It's so you can see they're together. As it comes apart, they may want to go out. At least on paper, you'll see that. But use paper to get the feel for what it is you're after, so you can kind of have a rough idea of what dimensions you want. And then if you really want to get creative, you can go with something along these lines that I tried to do, where it would actually wrap back underneath. Good luck and thanks for watching.